Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the opening of a new season, the 18th season for the Milwaukie Poetry Series. So we're absolutely delighted to be here and to have an 18th anniversary. So thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for those of you who are here at the Leading Library in Milwaukie, and also to those of you who have logged in and are on the live stream. So thank you for joining us. We know there's a lot of other demands on your time, and so there are other things that you could be doing, and you're spending it with poetry. So thank you very much for that. Today is 9/11, and so I'd like to start with a minute of silence in memory of all of those who gave their lives in that tragic incident. Thank you very much for the moment of silence to honor those that were involved in the 9/11 event. So I'm Tom Hogan, and I'm the director of the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and I've already said welcome to you, but the Milwaukie Poetry Series wants to do that, and we're very excited to have Anita Sullivan as our poet tonight. I'm going to be introducing her in a few minutes, but I want to say a few things first before we do that. We do have a broadside of one of Anita's poems, which is in the green paper, and Kristen has, I think, made those available. We have a second poem from Anita, and she has those on your chairs. So there will be a poem that is on your chairs on the white sheet of paper. So those are for you to take. So please do that. I said that this was the kickoff reading of our 18th season, and it is. So we have a flyer of our readings throughout the year. It starts tonight, and it goes through July 9th. It just seems to me that the summer has gone really fast. And I know when we were planning this, September 11th sounded a long way away. Now I'm talking about it, and I want to say that our poet from out of state is a poet who used to live in Oregon, but moved to Maine. Don Colburn is going to be with us July 9th, 2025. So July 9th, 2025 seems a long way away. But in any event, these are here for you. Please take them, put them up. That's what they're for. Any promotion of poetry is good if you have a place that you would like to do that. If you would like some more colored ones to pass out for a meeting that you have, we'd be happy to get them to you. So just let me know about that. I want to make some thanks because there are a group of people that work on this. I want to thank the city of Milwaukie first because they were supportive really from the beginning, and we appreciate that very much. Secondly, I want to thank the Leading Library. So we have a former reader here. Ingrid Witt is with us tonight, and thank you very much. And we were talking, and I think Ingrid Witt read in 2012 when we were at the Pond House. So we were there for a number of years. We were at St. John the Evangelist for a couple of months. We partnered with St. John the Evangelist with the First Friday programs, and then we've been here since this library opened, which was in 2020. So the library opened, then we had the pandemic, and we just got back to, and beginning in 2022, to having in-person readings. So we're delighted that we are able to do that. We have this lovely new library, so a big thanks to the Leading Library for their support. Certainly, thank you very much. I had the person you may see drifting in and out is our liaison with the library, Tara Go, and so she's very if she was here, I would ask her to stand up. And so I think she just wants to come in and out, but we want to acknowledge her when she does. We want to thank the committee that works on this. We do have a committee and a board, and you've met Kristen Roeder, who was here, who is on the committee and on the board. So she's one of the other members who are here tonight. So can we give Kristen a hand? Go. Yeah. Thank you. And finally, our technician tonight, Josh. Josh is a magician. He is from the Willamette Falls Media Center, and so he's the one that does the tech work for this, and does the setup and makes us look good and runs the live stream. So we thank you a lot, Josh, for everything, for your professionalism and your aplomb in handling everything. A couple of other things about coming events. We are having a First Friday event, so we're having another event in 2 days, which was the event we postponed from last Friday because of the heat. So it is a September 1st Friday. It is going to be at Milwaukie Floral at 6:30 p.m. Milwaukie Floral is at 3306 Southeast Lake Road. And those of you that have been there before know it's a nice venue, 6:30. So there will be some community leaders. It'll be a little different than it would have been in last Friday, but it doesn't fit with everybody's schedule. So those that can be there will be there, and we will be doing an open mic. So please come along. We'd love to have you for that. So that's the first thing. The next thing is that our next reader is Paul-Ann Peterson. Paul-Ann is going to be here October 9th, and she will be our October reader. And then we'll follow down on the schedule. So I've been looking forward to the reading tonight. And it's my pleasure to introduce our poet. Anita came to Oregon in 1982 as a writer, she says, seeking a career but not qualified as a school teacher. Almost immediately, she joined a poetry workshop being offered informally by two professors at the English department at Oregon State University. At the same time, she began to earn a living as a piano tuner. All this was a huge change in the life pattern that she had expected. Her first nonfiction book, The Seventh Dragon, The Riddle of Equal Temperament, won the Western States Book Award in 1985. Since then, she has published 2 poetry chapbooks, 2 full poetry-length collections, and a novel. She has been active in the rich literary community of our region as a co-founder of the unique poetry publishing cooperative, Airlie Press, as a board member of the Oregon Poetry Association, and by contributing to anthologies, blogs, reviews, and to generally fully find her calling. So let me say how we'll proceed tonight. We're going to welcome Anita in a moment. She's going to read about 40 minutes or so. At that point, we'll have a question and answer period. And Anita is going to then finish after the Q&A with a poem. So would you join me in welcoming our poet this evening, Anita Sullivan. Yeah. Yep, it is. Oh, I forgot to tell people, please silence your smartphones, telephonic devices, etc.
Well, we'll see. I can hear it coming back at me as though, although I can't stand like this for the whole time. Good. I'm really delighted to be here. I've heard much about the lending library, excuse me, and I had friends who had read here, and so it was especially gratifying and wonderful when I got an invitation. I'm going to do something a little unusual tonight because the poems I'm reading none of them have been published. They aren't in a collection. I have a few copies of my last collection of poetry, which was called Original Flamboyance. And there were 3 copies left, and I just brought them and put them back on the table, and then there's my first Airly Press book. And so they're there on the table along with my business card. And that leads me to this evening's topic. I'm putting together a chapbook that's called Born in the Year of the Horse. And I realized that, yes, the Year of the Horse doesn't come up for another 2 years. We have to get through the rest of the dragon and an entire snake before we get back to the Year of the Horse. But there's a reason for me going ahead and doing this now and postponing trying to get it into press or anything. I'm just writing. I'm still working on it. Although horses have always been there for me as a powerful mythical source, all too often they have failed to take full advantage of their beautiful offerings. I have failed, to take full advantage of their beautiful offerings. I have disrespected my inner horse. So somewhere, it just seems like I ought to. I was born in the year of the horse, according to the Chinese zodiac. There ought to be something about horses between me and them that doesn't necessarily involve riding them, because I'm scared of horses. But I admire them. I just want to draw them. I'd like to have been one of those people in the cave art about 30,000 years ago that drew beautiful, beautiful pictures of horses among other creatures. And so, but I've gathered a group of poems in a chapbook in a way that I have not done before. I notice as the process is going on, I'm acting and thinking differently than usual. After all, I'm up in my years now, so it's about time I did something different, I guess. And so horses are truly fulfilling their half of the bargain they and I made together a long time ago, but which I basically forgot about. And yet, now I'm discovering this horsishness, or whatever you want to call it, ranging around inside of me. So horses have been enlarging space inside my body, mind, and heart for old wisdom, who, in this case as horse, gently lays its beautiful muzzle onto my left shoulder, and I find myself being slowly filled with a horse way of thinking. And once you get to that kind of state, a lot of times coincidences will just start happening, and you wonder why they're happening. And I only noticed the other day that my business card, which just says Anita Sullivan, poet, it doesn't talk anything about a career, it has a horse on it. And I hadn't realized that I could fit that into this whole business of born in the year of the horse. So what I'm going to do is not going to be reading you a bunch of horse poems, all about how I fell in love with this horse and I rode this horse and I did that. No, I'm gathering a group of, this is a different approach that I'm making to the way I usually put together a book of poems. And I can't really explain it, but hopefully the poems themselves will come to you somewhat the way they have come to me. So I'll just move forward right into the poems that I'm going to read. And by the way, the other handout that I put on your chairs was not a poem, it was just an illustration for a poem. I think you probably figured that out. Okay, the first poem is At the Bench. She unhooks her helmet and sets it down level with the blackbird's knee. Even then the bird doesn't fly, but sidles along the back of the familiar park bench. Insulated by gloves, her fingers absently flicker and poke across the bicycle's handlebars in mute apology for her lack of cause and croaks. Their unspoken words wax, wane, evoke, ignite. Locking eyes with the bird, she feels herself pulled in by a delicate paralysis she neither fears nor yet quite cherishes. I've gotten kind of big these days about human-animal communication and how it really needs to be renewed so that we go back to times when we understood what animals were saying and the motions they were making, and we didn't need words necessarily. That wasn't so. So the second poem I'm going to read is kind of basically sums up my experience with horses. It's called "Until You Can Draw the Horse." It's sort of like, you will never go outside again until you can draw the horse. There's this voice, until you can draw the horse. In 6th grade, I drew horses with Linda. She lay on the floor of her room. I sat on a chair, sketching the long muzzles, the perfect arches of the necks. This may be how I discovered certain things are impossible. The line of careless scorn between eye and nostril. I began riding lessons at the same stable where Linda went, but not at the same time. I fell off a horse. The rampant sinews making willing eclipses of themselves. She drew daily with her right hand and mean spirits. Horses poured from her. I took up the violin. I practiced an hour a day. To play a scale correctly is to hear each note a split second before your finger touches the neck of the instrument. This is impossible. The ways of drawing wrong the curves of a horse's body are virtually infinite. The wide forehead not tending toward any geometric form, a raft across the top of the face, the eye a dark star, a portal. On the walls of Chauvet Cave, the necks are perfect. The artist worked quickly, did not erase. I actually have in the miscellaneous material that I brought with me today an article from Archaeology magazine about the Lascaux caves with the there's horses on that wall, and they are just heart-stoppingly beautiful. But to draw one, how did they do it? So the next poem, I'm moving ahead with small creatures and possible communication between them and humans. It's called The House Ant's Ordinary. House ants. And so I'm talking about house ants. They come in and sometimes they don't go out. There are too many of them. But anyway, I had to have a respect for them. It's a hard life living in the bathroom sink. What in the heck are they doing there? So this is kind of a riddle. If you didn't have me telling you already these juicy tidbits already, the house ant's ordinary, like the ordinary of the Catholic Mass, it's what you hang things onto it. But the ordinary is the core element for other things. They sleep curled up so tight they disappear into the molecular drift of whatever hard surface they presently mostly inhabit. They curl so tight you're hard put to see them as black, even as skeletal against the pale ivory of the bathroom sink. Its shiny surface rising from the drain to widen into a bowl, the bowl's lip, the rim of the hole, all within their scope. Surely their native landscape is not here, where they careen and scatter between bouts of faucet flood into what much later may deepen into pox. They live each spelled darkness as mystery, and whenever I turn on a midnight light, I swear they have all disappeared. Removing their shadows before each sleep, they rest in the curve of their individual apses like tiny seeds. How can this be mere, that they awaken by instantly inflating to several times their size? If I wave my hands over an empty sink, day or night, I only know they rise up like stallions. And I realized one day there is something together. There's something about that's what's on your chair is a photograph of tiny horses. They rise up like stallions. They rise up like stallions. And so there are horses right before you that I equate with those ants in my kitchen, bathroom sink. And I just want to run that by you because I think it's amazing. It was the Celtic peoples who created those those horses are probably not quite as small as an ant, but pretty small, and yet they're complex, and they've got those same little skinny parts and the little balls that ants have. So to me, suddenly I realized, whoa, they have something in common, the ants and I don't want to say the aunts, because that's a different one. Ants. Okay. I'm going to go out into the atmosphere here. The next poem, it's called Annular Eclipse. And if you may recall, there was exactly a year ago in October, there was an annular eclipse. That means the moon doesn't quite make a full eclipse of the sun, but there's a little ring of fire and around the edges at least. And so I happened to be in New Mexico, and where there was sunshine in October, and I just loved all the coincidences around this annular eclipse. There is an epigraph in this poem, and it's by Kobayashi Isa, those of you who might know, the Japanese poet. I guess you don't call them poets. Okay, it's very small. I am going to roll over, so please move, cricket. An over-symmetrical sun is gradually losing its belly as if being zipped into a black body bag. The bag tightens. The moon threatens to expunge the ring of fire with the icy swooping of small knives. Swope, swope. I made up the word. At 82% of its tether, the moon cartwheels out onto our paper sidewalk screens, each image identical in shape, gapped, flat, and lean, as from the same pitcher poured, the same angle achieved. Despite leaks around the edges, trapped in horseshoe shape, the riotous moon climbs on top of sun to give it rim. Together, they enter the state of full spin, pricking the sky with the bright horseshoe imprints of the sun's unpronged feet. The moon turns, turns, and turns until it is fully spun without crushing the cricket. This one is another sort of riddle-ish poem. I like to write my poems like that. I don't go out of my ways to say I'm going to write a poem that's like a riddle, but I let that sort of happen as part of the poem. And the next few poems are going to be from my garden and some of the amazing things that happen, as I'm sure you all know, in small parts of your life during the day. He looks up. Every time I begin to water a single bed of garden plants, I look for him. An entire country down there waits upon my waterings. I tilt forward, abolishing daylight. Flecks of living matter scurry around inside a thumbnail village composed as a desolate moor, black with mint compost. I wedged the hose nozzle into the curled fist of its metal stanchion, set down the circular base at the tip of the bed, head for the water source. At the first squeak of the faucet, the first rush of mist spray, out he comes, hitching up his chitinous cloak, rocking from side to side, not a scuttle, but a kind of a mad dash. Evacuate now! And so they do. And so he turns his back on me, a village beadle, signaling his congregation to leave home at short notice. No more danger of drowning by hose than by rain. yet every time close, close. Yeah, you don't know who you're spraying when you're out there watering your garden sometimes. And also, when I was composing this poem, I was thinking about all the fires, and that's just it. He says he's this special little creature. I'm not sure if it's a beetle of some kind. He comes out, and as soon as he thinks that the hose has been turned on to get everybody out. I mean, I can't imagine it not happening that way, actually. A beetle, if any of you are wondered, it's fun to make words sound the same that mean different. Beadle is a minor church official in British, I think, in the English church. But this is a beetle, not a beetle, but he's acting like a beetle. Okay. Oh, this is still in the garden. I don't own a cat, but there are plenty of them around that think I do. What the cats must know. Each of the 7 major angles in our garden is watched over by a different cat. 1 calico, 2 tabbies, 1 marmalade, 2 tortoiseshells, 1 black. Heads up, alert. They lie still to avoid the garden's rollicking subsurface geometries. Daytimes, they meow purposefully to anyone who comes around a corner to hang a basket of clothes or find a quiet place to sit. Bewildered that we spend our days following rumors, unspooling endless threads from the old riverbed still somewhere beneath us. And if we put the right question to the right cat, how long ago was the river here, and why did it ever leave? Would they tell us the whole story, etched on unstable river rocks? Before gravities and a wider bed pulled the water away, left a garden space and a wordless tale we have only from scratch marks that still make new patterns in the rains. At sunset, 7 cats disappear back under our neighbors' fences like leaves reversing the direction of their storm swirl. And here again, still in my garden, Jane Goodall, the beetles and the birds, and in this case it's the squirrels. We have red squirrels. And this poem started off, if you have any interest in how poets draw things together, it started off as I was going to write a rant because somebody I saw on television say something about, referred to something as red. And I said, that's not red, it's orange. And it makes all the difference if you're passing information along and they have some picture in their head and it's the wrong picture. So you have to be precise about these things. So this is, when I talked about my red squirrels, I wanted to make sure I was using the right adjective. Local clay. The red squirrel freeway that circles my yard at an elevation between the treetops and the old board fence has off-ramps, such as the cherry tree dead on its east side, alive on its west, half white each spring. In autumn, a constant line of red squirrels, each with a walnut in its mouth, emerges from the bottom of the cherry on the way to bury their treasures in my garden. They pause at the driveway for a ritual of permission. In evidence to this holy and ancient rite, there at the bottom of the twice-born tree, the small rodents rise up onto their hind legs so that their newly visible facades glow from an inner light, shining out from their not red but orange tummies. Not simply tummies, but pillars. Not simply pillars, but mighty columns, exactly like the ones at Petra in Jordan, built not of Greek marble, but of local clay. which in the ancient language is exactly the color of the fur of our own red squirrels. Yes, and also impossible to name. I love those squirrels. This is a slightly darker poem, and maybe not in quite my garden. It's just a garden where the gods were, some of the gods in olden time. In some of the mythologies, they put together, they're trying to make humans, and they started off with I don't know, mud, and guess what happened in the rain? They melted, and so they tried to use sticks. It's like the Three Little Pigs story. Then they tried different materials, and they just weren't working. So it took them a while, and it's the same with birds. When they must have been some lesser god or was working on the birds, because they went through a lot, especially the smaller ones that have two throats. If you know about, they can purr with one throat while they're tweedling with the other one. So here's one idea of the birds being created. Bird half made. The bird is wounded badly, feathers scattered all around, not applied yet. Head and throat spit pain past bearing. For a long time, we humans have been soaked in a plant frame of mind, lacking in certain risky habits that come with a second throat. The sound that will become a song starts to rise through its bucket brigade of harshnesses. Each throat throbs like a violin's double stop or a chickadee's muttered accompaniment to his frequent announcements. Thus the sound of blood and pain drips clear back down to the bedrock and through the soil somewhat further beneath, mimics the dry prehistoric from which it came, still comes. The sound, scattered among the sotto voce of flagrantly negotiating galaxies, declares, "This is my song." Well, some birds don't really seem to sing, but amazing things happening in gardens. We're getting bigger and bigger now. I'm leaving out the dogs. Haven't had any reason to write about them yet. And this one is actually still in my garden because it's talking about a clothesline. Why I am afraid of spiders. I thought I had to tackle that sometime once and for all and get it over with. Why am I so afraid of spiders? Well, I wrote this poem and it helped. There's an epigraph from the Iliad, book 14. And the Iliad, if you may remember, is really one big dialogue and set of serene kind of godly arguments against war. And so the epigraph is imagining, Homer is imagining what it would be like if Zeus knocked over an oak tree in his need to battle, and this huge oak tree fell to the ground. And it was much like the way the heroes fell to the ground, making a loud thud. But if they uprooted an oak, a mighty oak tree that's as mighty as these gods, then you could see the stink of hell was under there, and there was all these fumes going around. And so there's this little quote here that, and from it, meaning the oak that fell over and pulled up all these roots, and from it there drifts the mephitic reek of brimstone, and courage drains from the man who witnesses it. So here's my garden in comparison to that. 3 pale gold ribbons hang stiffly and evenly spaced through the length of my clothesline. I fastened them there as a reminder to bend especially low when crossing the garden, because sometimes the ribbons back up against their wooden pegs and clot into spiders, opaque and filled with the unregurgitated matter of women gone over to madness, who have been who have been tied, knotted, shoved, and pushed aside until they've become all hair, no eyes. This is why spiders frighten me. I do not know who owes what beneath this shaggy row of compensatory rights in waiting. Who will flaunt the cloak of madness if the eyes are gone? Don't know where that's going. Oh, and here I am in the library, so I thought I'd better bring the library poem because it fits in pretty well with the rest of the Born in the Year of a Horse. And I don't know how it's done here, but I was helping out at the Eugene Public Library for a couple of years as a shelf reader, and you go along and you with your neck at some awful angle, and you read what's on the spine and try and make sure it's in the right place on the shelf, and so it's sometimes they would they would get a row of words that sort of held together like almost a sentence on the spines of the books. So I started taking out notes. I mean, for the last year I was there, I was taking all these notes because you don't want just any old four words. You've got to have the right ones. And so it was so much fun to do that. So when I read this, I'm going to hold up my hand like that when it's something I read on the library shelves, and then the rest of it is I had to add in. And it's codes hidden on library shelves. Codes. Did I say poem? Codes hidden on library shelves. Don't leave the front door open. Any unknown legal someone could sneak in, like the white cat next door, or a person trying to become an expert at getting ordinary rhythms wicked. After the creative writing courses have trapped them for months in the garden, night, queen, shadows, wolf. Life is hard, your mother must have told you at least once, but you learned worse than that. You learned dust, 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 sand, wool. Every time you tried to have a nice, clean adventure in the Devil's Good Passage, you found it clogged with dead faces falling unseen. Stop lecturing me. Be safe. So much. You want to shout to your parents now that you are about to turn 38. They have no idea you're one of the 1% who has the recurring dream, Cleopatra, 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 drowning. It was actually kind of a depressing because there was so much darkness. I mean, it's like if it doesn't have black, dark, shadow, evil, something, then nobody's going to read it. And so I'm not going to worry about that too much. But and here's one. I'm not exactly sure how it fits in with the horses and so on. I'm going to have to, if it doesn't, out it goes. But it's a. I don't know if any of you have been to cities that have huge bells in the belfry of their churches, really, really enormous, and some of them in village churches throughout the world, I guess, but particularly in Europe. And I just referred to this poem as The Large Bells because I admire them so much for how powerful they are. The large bells. They move as mountains do, which is to say, piecemeal in the extreme for being so hugely tethered. When they sound, I submit to being taken apart at the cells, the seams, to return to rubble, even though I never was rubble. I am undone by them, even at the distance where they qualify as music. A wedding begins and ends under the belfry of a village church, though everyone below could die of them without being touched, and merely by the flagrant physics of excitation. Would I could live one last hour falling through a full-bore cacophony of bells like a tender sunbeam sliding down a slot canyon wall, no more water than light. Better to enter wildness truly dismembered than to endure as sufficiently adamantine. There's probably a proverb in there somewhere. Better to enter wildness truly dismembered. Yeah, in other words, you don't want to suffer on the way through. Okay, what are we looking at for time here? I'm doing okay? Yeah. Oh, all right. This poem is January Flowers. On a day of freezing fog, rigid in my bed of leftover dreams, I saw the tufted heart of a blooming sunflower, but in black and white. In the forest itself, the black and mossy firs were looming from all sides as verbs unspoken. I, peering, listening, could not quite distinguish lack of motion from silence. I forgot how in winter, with its forced rationings, a stand of trees held rigidly enough may send out a noise like a horse blowing after it takes a drink. Held temporarily as one inoculated unit, many send out a noise like a, oh, excuse me, I got the wrong version of the poem in here. That's kind of funny, because I wouldn't cross that out. Okay, let me start over. I'm going to start over. On a day of freezing fog, rigid in my bed of leftover dreams, I saw the tufted heart of a blooming sunflower, but in black and white. In the forest itself, the black and mossy firs were looming from all sides as verbs unspoken. I, peering, listening, could not quite distinguish lack of motion from silence. I forgot how in winter, with its forced rationings, a stand of trees held rigidly enough may send out a noise like a horse blowing after it takes a drink. Thus each tree, by replacing, displaces space. This arouses in the forest plasma a sacrificial tension, the huge tolling of a familiar understanding, and I, dipping into and out of like a wick, seeking their same relief, come to a clearing where sunlight seeps, magnified. I think, yes, the light here is perfect to color my sunflower heart, and I am satisfied. So I'm going to go back to see something. Oh, here's one of the ones I neglected. It's a very domestic poem. It's spoken by someone who's just finished making pancakes for her kids. After working the domestic pancake shift, and there's the epigraph, which is, I love this, that which exists only once and for a short time cannot be measured. Roberto Colasso. While being scrubbed in soapy water, my spatula softly asserts its animal self, lightly flexes its stainless steel torso, even as that drying, gleaming flare disappears into the dish tub. This morning only, almost an eared being beneath the shallow water, and what if I lifted out by the scruff of its neck, its mane? Shake with fingertips, one last fleeting moonlight slip of manic reflection from a rectangle with the heart of a sphere. And the regarded spatula, now at rest in its rack, see how light-knifed, sun-gazed, it peels slowly apart, layer by layer, starting from the narrow purple reflection down its extremely slightly convex torso, as if a cell phone were ringing in there to express total satisfaction. See, there's another total satisfaction. Sometimes you have to track these things down. I really think I don't really have more poems to read because I hesitate to go back into my my book that and so yeah, that'd be I'd like to do. Oh, I have to come up with another poem? Oh, that's easy. Oh, house rules, okay. So we're having...
Sure. Okay. So let's give Anita a hand. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us and for the reading. So we want to have an opportunity to ask questions. And
Yeah.
well, how we're going to handle that is that Kristen has a microphone. And so she's going to come around if you have a question. And please speak into the mic because we'd like to get the question recorded. And then Anita's going to be right here. So we'll have that recorded. And I will start. And I always wonder who you're reading, number one, and who you feel have influenced you. So it's a two-part question. There may be some overlap.
Who have I been reading?
Who are you reading now?
Oh, who am I reading?
Who are you reading now, and who do you feel have influenced you?
Oh, okay. I love that question, but I never have it written down on a piece of paper to haul out and give you the answer right away. I like more. I tend to go by individual poems than complete authors in who I'm reading. But we're more asking a favor than whom I actually reading. At the moment, I'm not actually reading any poetry at all because I usually read it in segments that I don't read any for a while and then I read some and then. But I'm always interested in poets who play with language in such a way that it's just the language itself that you get, and you don't need the narration. Matter of fact, I've got a quote here. If I can just find it, I knew that I would want to bring up this quote, and I won't look too long before I give up. But it's like poetry to each individual person who. I'm not going to find it here. Okay, I can't find it. So I am reading. I go back to Les. What's his name? Les Murray, who is an Australian poet who's not alive anymore, and he has some poems that I just think are absolutely marvelous, along with a whole bunch of them that I don't like. So sometimes you read one person and then you want to plow through all the rest of their books and then it just doesn't work too well. So right now I'm trying to I may try to reread the Odyssey now that I've reread the Iliad, and that's kind of hard work. But if you just say like one book a day, well, that's too much. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a very good answer because
No, that's okay.
And the other part of it was which poetry.
You feel have influenced you.
Have influenced me. Yeah. Well, I think right off the top of my head it would be Gerard Manley Hopkins, because when I was a teenager, I would lie on the sofa and read him, and I didn't understand much of what he said, but I love the his rhythms, sort of. No, I can't get into it. But okay, and then Yeats was another one. So I grew up with the British school of, and at the same time over on this continent was Amy. I mean, was. Okay, sorry. This is the one from Massachusetts. Emily Dickinson, yes. Yeah. Let's see. I would love to quote you something, but I think I just one. She's talking about dreams, and she says dreams are some kind of bower that keep us rich an hour, then fling us poor out of the purple door into the precinct raw possessed before. I just can't remember what kind of dower it was. Dreams of the, so you can go around, well, it's got to be 2 syllables, right? Dreams of the special dower, dreams of the lightful dower, to get the right rhythm. And as for contemporary poetry, I love Brenda Hillman. She's a favorite of mine, and she is out of California. There's an awful lot of marvelous, at least in fiction, probably happening in poetry too, but people coming, people who are not just born in this country and are white, and we have just a huge African tradition that's coming in, and there's just going over to Welsh from English is really amazing, and I don't have a list with me, but I read all the time, and maybe I should make a list. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts that?
I'm interested in about the Iliad and somebody else had
No, we want to get the question.
I'm interested in your pursuit of Homer.
Uh-huh.
And this doesn't seem to have too much to do with your particular mode or your style, but what is it about Homer that attracts you?
Oh boy, that's a good question, because I've been asking myself the same question. Because it used to be that if there are certain things you thought you ought to read, and there was somebody who said, oh, I've gone through all the Shakespeare plays, and you say, oh boy, I'm lucky to get through 2 or 3. I think that what it is about Homer is that you don't ever know when you come at him again that it's going to be the same thing there that you just saw before. And he's really extremely versatile, and I hate to act like I know something about Homer, but I really don't. If you want about his Odyssey, I don't know if any of you have read the book that is called. Is it called Circe? Anyway, there's a fiction book that really explains Penelope and why she was doing what she was doing every night. But one of the things about reading the Iliad, I said I was going to force myself to read it, and because a lot of it is just a catalog of the names of the princes that were bringing horses, and they were bringing horses, and maybe that has something to do with it. Chariots. Yeah, and I was intrigued by the fact that this was kind of the end of the age of the heroes, and so it was kind of the end of the age of the chariots, and that means that the horses probably got a break for a while after that. But I just think it's amazing that almost if you go through, if you have a copy at home, just run in and take a look at the Iliad and look at the beginnings of each of the parts of the. It's not just written out as one big long, but they break it into parts. And usually the reason for that is that someone has stopped talking and it's time for someone else to talk. So even when they were arguing with one another, they always followed this sort of rule that they would speak beautifully and in front of everyone. That's what you're supposed to do. You make your case by beautiful rhetoric. And but there was always different 100 ways, different ways of saying, "Thus he spoke," or that, "Thus did ungrateful somebody," or other. Yeah. So it was. That attracted me mightily.
You mentioned the way you like to play with words, and obviously you're a lover of words, as I think are all poets. You're also a lover of horses, and this just occurred to me as you were talking about the horses of yore in classical texts, but I'm wondering what you make of the crazy, weird names that people give to their horses, like all these racehorse horses, that apparently has gone back since Roman times. They've always had these really bizarre names.
Oh, have they? Oh my, what I'm, I was trying to remember the famous horses from mythology, which had names like Bellerophon or something like that. I can't remember. And I guess Pegasus was that a name for a horse? Yeah. And well, I mean, I think most recently, recently meaning maybe just this the 20th century, I think they ran out of horse names, or they felt like they'd run out of names that nobody else had used, and so they got to. I even have a poem about that, about Adam and Eve, kind of having an argument about the horse names, and so. Yeah, gosh, yeah.
I was noticing in some of the earlier poems the references to the Catholic Church. And being your friend of many years, I hadn't noticed this in your work before, though, that you were using some of the, you were raised in the Catholic Church. And I'm finding some references sneaking in, like the title of the House Ants Ordinary.
Right.
And then the beetle was a beetle.
Yeah.
And there's probably more.
And there's
in
an
there.
apse.
Yeah, an apse. Yeah.
I can't remember what an apse is. It's a tiny. Is it part of a church?
It's
like the nave and the apse, and they
Right.
cross each other or something
Right.
like that. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just kind of interested in if you. This is sort of off the wall. I'm just not thinking this for the first time, and maybe you've already thought about it, maybe not. But do you feel like your Catholicism in the past has somehow gotten into your work today?
Well,
some ways of looking.
Yeah, I think it's been all along, because if you're a writer or particularly a poet, you're stacking up the unlikely things. You're looking out for the unlikely things because it adds a little spice, but. Is my Catholicism coming through? I left it pretty firmly behind when I was about 18, and I haven't felt guilty or anything, but I do feel that I have taken with me, almost like Trump and his documents, stealing them from the White House, I've taken some things from the Catholic Church that I'm not sure I was supposed to, and still consider myself no longer a Catholic. But yeah. Kind of, what did you say? I'm steeped in mythology, because that's another. There's the Christian mythology, because it is no offense meant to use the word mythology in that way. Yeah, I don't worry about that or even think about it if they come in. And well, on some occasions, I have to admit, I stole a word. There's some pretty juicy titles that are given to people in the Catholic Church, and when you get to the crucifixion and that, you get some really beautiful, aching words and phrases and attitudes that I probably incorporated in. I mean, I didn't sit down and say, I'm going to do this, but because that's the very thing about poetry. You sit down, and the very thing you can't do is this thing you sit down, you've got to so you have to wait. It has to hit you slant, as Emily Dickinson said. And I remember I heard that quote. I can't remember the whole quote, but it just says, you tell it slant. Tell the truth, but tell it slant. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes, the one beetle. Well, that comes from all the British murder mysteries I've read. Dorothy Sayers and all that. and she will, of course, have those kind.
Dickens, too.
Deacon?
Dickens.
Oh,
too.
Dickens too. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. So sometimes it's nice to change up your mythology set and use a different one. So that's why actually using horses in a, which you probably didn't hear very many horses there, did you? There in one of, let's see if I still have that. It was in the back of. No, sorry, I had. Oh, let me read you this one because I didn't talk anything about my time as a piano tuner, and I got a lot of wonderful ideas and metaphors and experiences. And so here is. This is from the original Flamboyance, the most recent collection of poetry I had. It was published in 2022. It's on the table over there, yeah, if anybody wanted it. And here's one you might enjoy because doesn't have any horses in it. If you find a horse in here, tell me about it. It's called The Piano Dreamed. The piano dreamed she had fingernails, which was odd because how could she prefer their narrow lacquered surfaces to the plastic she was born with? And heaving herself around like an elephant trying to see its tail, she fuddled back through 2 centuries of forbidden ivories to feel the smooth pulse of wooden keys still glowing with life. Much in the same way, I long for things to be still here after I've forgotten them so deeply that I no longer know if I'm fabricating histories that did not actually exist. I long for things to be still here. I remember a braided rug I wove while I was waiting for my second boy to be born, out of old blankets, a wool skirt I rarely wore, and how it was blue near the middle but green in the very center. We put it on the floor for him to lie on, but it never would stay totally flat. Did I think of it then as a small sea, prone to squalls? And there's that fence where 4 donkeys, unable to see over it, brayed together in the mornings. Remember how their loud and rhythmic screeches tried to kindle our desperation. You ever heard them? You've heard them? But there was no way to stop ourselves from laughing every time. So it was great. I saw this piano in my dream, and yes, you're right. Maybe we could let that pass. I appreciate you being here.
Is there one more question? One final question? Is there another poem you want to read?
Is there another?
Do you want to have this be the last one?
I would like to find one more poem if I could.
Okay.
If I could, and since it's appropriate because this is such a somewhat recently published. Not that matters. Yeah, I think you guys might like this one. It's a favorite of mine because I hardly ever write about my parents or my children. To me, that's oddly enough that's private. That's private, and yet most people feel like when they write poems, that's private. So I just go to one more level, or a different level. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. I mean, nobody's right or wrong. This is called A Small Dark Bird. Had not been thinking of her at all, feeling a little dizzy, sitting in the garden. Let me start over. A small dark bird. Had not been thinking of her at all, feeling a little dizzy, sitting in the dark, gazing at nothing, weary at the end of the day, I whispered my mother's name. Hers and mine both start with the same letter, are both somewhat rare. But how does it sound? I've almost forgot. A word I hardly ever spoke before, so I tried it in the air, and I heard my voice as someone else, while I sat in the dark on her behalf, someone else whispering her name. inside, a quiet opened, like a narrow lagoon lined with reeds, a quiet memory, her own, not mine. I did not know it, only felt it pass through me on its way out. I opened my mouth, whispered again, with breath enough so her name need not touch my throat, and it flew like a small, dark bird. My mother, being called to by someone she loved, an instant in her actual life, the memory caught for years. Maybe her younger sister, my aunt, calling softly from the front porch, through the screen door at dusk, she inside next to one of her father's clocks. "Wake up, Aggie, wake up. I have something to tell you," caught in a cobweb on the ceiling. I whispered as a sort of test. Hers and mine both start with the same letter, are both somewhat rare. I tried it in the air, and felt it firm like a small chocolate, the last one in the box, unseen in its crinkled black and shiny paper boat, now rushing out through the locks.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being here tonight and for sharing your poems. And let's give Anita another hand. Can we do that? Well, thank you again, and thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, too, for those of you that are on the live stream. So we appreciate that. And we want to say, if any of you want to be at the First Friday reading, this coming Friday night, please do that.
What part of Milwaukie floor was that at? The upstairs or downstairs?
Downstairs. Okay. Thank you again, everybody. Let's give everyone a hand for being here. Good night, everyone.